YouTube changed their configuration and we're live. So we'll go with it. Okay, this is Moshe coming to you from Israel and the Galilee. So you'll get to hear about the wars from somebody who lives here for many years, and I could explain to you what's going on and what's not going on and try to give you the reality. Like, for instance, with Iran, our home front command has not given us any instructions regarding Iran doing an attack against us, which makes me think that it's not that real. But then on the other hand, they did put the military of Israel on alert, which is a sign of something, you know. But I think if it was significantly serious, they would have, a home front command would have given us instructions, which they generally do if there's some serious risk, and no such instruction has come out. Okay, so I don't really know if Iran has any capability of doing anything because we did take out their radar. So Iran are a bunch of big liars, and they could just be running around saying, "Oh, we're going to, attack Israel," and yeah, we hear that a lot, and precious little. So I'm not really thinking that the threat of an attack is very serious. Now, America has warned us of attacks from from Iran many times that never happened. So, I mean, they're probably just trying to be cautious. Hang on a second. That's what I'm picking up here. Now, with Yemen, the Houthis, they last night launched 3 drones at us, and everyone was taken down, I believe, all of them, before they reached Israel. Now, what does this tell us? It tells us the other day when the UK and the US hit the Houthis in Yemen with a big underground bunker, they probably used bunker buster bombs from their jets. They don't have the missiles anymore because they didn't launch any missiles, just drones, which are generally easy to take down. We take them down with Navy ships, we take them down with Iron Domes, we take them down with helicopters, with fighter jets, and that was it. So the attack that they made on the Houthis the other day was significant. All right, so these are the kind of things I'm going to give you, which you're probably not going to get from other people unless you're listening to people in Israel that are trying to be honest and direct. There are people in Israel that do talk truth, but I've never seen any that interprets the scriptures correctly. All right, I'm going to do a quick, we got sound and picture. I'm going to put a couple of very fast posts up, and then we're going to get into the Trump situation, which is ever moving and changing, and we're going to get into what could happen today, what's likely to happen, and what could happen. Okay? We're going to cover both perspectives of this. Let me concentrate on my posts so I don't get the typos here. And people are coming in, so we'll let them come in, and then we'll cover Trump. we're really at a crossroads with Trump here. I mean, this could be a massive event and then again a nothing event. So we'll cover that. Just let me get my email address up there, which will take a few seconds. And then we're done. We'll move ahead. Oh, I got a typo. Sorry. Gotta fix it. Be a moment. Sorry about that. That's what I get for talking. Okay, everything's good. Oh, we had a lot of people come in and go away. Okay, praise time. There is no God like Jehovah. 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 There is no Messiah like Yeshua. 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 All right, the Trump thing has taken a new, I've got some new light on the situation, but let me give you the update. Trump went to the Supreme Court yesterday he had a motion heard, which was designed to postpone or delay or push off, whatever words you want to use, the sentencing in the New York State Court in New York City today on his 34 felony counts. Okay, the Supreme Court denied Trump 5-4 was the vote. The reason was they said Trump could just pursue this with ordinary appeals. He didn't have to have this motion. Now, here's the twist in this. If the judge in New York sentenced Trump to jail time, he could immediately have the court officer put handcuffs on Trump, call him a flight risk, bring him out of the courtroom into prison, put him in Rikers Island or any place else they have for these people. And then what happens? Can the Secret Service intervene? I don't think so. Can they say Trump's not safe, we have to accompany him? I have no idea. This is uncharted territory. We've never seen this before. I have no idea what would happen. I really don't know. But let me tell you what I did what I understand now that I didn't understand yesterday, and it makes things significantly worse. Maybe. The President of the United States can only pardon a federal offense or an offense in the District of Columbia, because the District of Columbia is not one of the 50 states. It's the Whore of Babylon in Revelation 17. It's just a city, and it's administered by the federal government, and they're located there. So this is a state court conviction Trump is facing today, and he, as president, does not have, or any president, does not have the power to pardon somebody from a state court conviction. This would mean a city court or a county court or a state court, anything. In other words, his jurisdiction to pardon any president of the United States is limited to courts in the District of Columbia or the federal court system. So you can't say, well, he puts Trump in jail, and then 10 days later, somehow they swear Trump in a jail cell, and then his assistant whips out a pardon order, and Trump signs it and then leaves jail. No, that cannot happen. So, first, let me just give you the facts, and you draw your own conclusions. Do I know what's going to happen? No. I don't know. But I'll give you both sides of it. And you draw your own conclusions. But if this goes the extreme route, the country's going to go crazy. You will most likely have civil war. I mean, this is going to go nuts. Okay? Most people see convicting Trump of 34 felonies in New York City that a normal defendant would probably get a fine or some reprobation for a year, which means, you know, if you break the law the next year, your sentence will you'll have to go to jail for this. But if you march yourself, nothing will happen to you, and it just goes away. You know, they wouldn't bring him up on 34 charges. So he has 34 felony convictions. I don't know what the sum total of the sentences would be, but usually a felony's at least a year and a day, I think. So it could be 34 years. So the judge released a paper which was not a binding decision at all. And he said that he intends to give Trump no prison time, no probation, and no fine. Okay? Yes, he could do that. It leaves Trump as a convicted felon 34 times. Now, this whole effort may likely be just designed to put a felon stamp on Trump's forehead. The judge and the district attorney and the prosecutors are taking a dangerous chance here that Trump, Trump knows this was a railroad job. Trump will likely go after them any way he can. He is a vindictive individual. He tells you he is. So Trump may go after them. As a seated president of the United States, would that be hard for him to do? Child's play. He assigns 1 or 2 or 3 people from his staff to work with the people that are running the FBI that are going to be his appointees. And they take, I don't know what it would take, 6 or 8 agents assigned to it full time with probably 20 clerks. And they start going through everything they could find on these characters, looking for political decisions, where the motive for the judge and the prosecutor, the district attorney, was political. And they build a real case against these guys to get, and I'm sure Trump could easily find this on people like this. And then Trump runs them up the flagpole with his own criminal conviction against them, and they get disbarred. And then the convictions that these guys did, all of them, are probably going to get thrown out of court if they could get him on lying or perjury or something serious, which I'm pretty sure he could do with people like this. All their decisions are null and void, and they go behind bars. So do you think the judge and the prosecutor are acting correctly? Well, not correctly, are acting, they're sticking their neck out. Why would they stick their neck out if this is not going to stop Trump from being the president? It's just they're taking their neck and they're putting it on the chopping block, waiting for the guy with the axe to come cut their head off, allegorically speaking. So, first, the court said, I believe the district attorney said it, we're just going to postpone the sentencing indefinitely. Now, what that meant, that was in September. What that meant is, number one, the prosecutors had a gun to Trump's head. Anytime they wanted to pull the trigger, they could and sentence him to prison, which would be chaotic for America. However, the position of the Department of Justice in America, not necessarily the position of the Supreme Court, and there is no written law to this effect, but their policy has been that the president, when he's seated, which starts January 20th around noon, I think, cannot be called for depositions, cannot be called to testify, cannot be sued civilly, cannot be charged criminally, cannot be forced to being a witness or anything. In other words, he's got immunity. The Supreme Court's confirmed this. Well, no, the immunity of the president is for things he did while he was president, which this hush money case in New York City was not. The events in this case were before he was president and after. It's not while he was president. Although he's screaming immunity, it doesn't seem to have relevance in the eyes of the Supreme Court. So first, we're not going to sentence him, which means the felony charge never gets officiated. In other words, until there's a sentencing hearing and a sentence handed down by the court officially on the record, Trump is not a felon. That's how they're interpreting it. Now, I know a guy that was in the gun business that got charged with some things. He did some things that were off color big time. He was, I knew the guy. I wasn't, I just knew who the guy was, and he was shady. So what happened with his case is he pled guilty. Okay? It was in federal court. He pled guilty. Then the ATF told him he had to get rid of all his guns. Now, that's kind of odd, because if this theory the lawyers are putting out on social media, that Trump is not a felon unless the sentencing is completed, then why did the ATF tell this guy, you got to get rid of your guns? Well, they could have been lying to him, and he bought it. Then he had a lot of ammo in his house because he was in the business, and they told him, no, you got to get rid of the ammo too, and he did it. And I don't know if the ammo fits into it, but anyway, they could have just been lying to him, and they probably were, and nobody seemed to pick it up. But he didn't want to start a fight with him either. He tried to change his plea to not guilty, and the judge wouldn't let him. So I don't think he had a really great legal team behind him or anything like that. So he got sentenced, and the guy went. But he was doing fraud, things like this, And he was irritating the ATF, and, he was asking for it, So anyway, so first, we're not going to sentence him indefinitely. Next, we hear the judge saying, well, we got to sentence him because if we don't sentence him, he doesn't have his right to appeal. Well, he was appealing it, I think, before. I don't know if that's true. That's what the judge said, and that might be the judge's opinion. The lawyers seem to be convinced that without the sentencing, the case is not complete, so Trump couldn't appeal. But I'm not so sure that's the case. Okay? So, first, we're not going to sentence you indefinitely. Then he says, oh, we're going to sentence you, but I believe the best thing to do is no jail, no probation, no fine. Why? Well, because the practices of the Justice Department, which is federal and doesn't really have jurisdiction here, is that the president, when seated, is immune from anything. You can't send him to jail. You can't hold him in contempt of court. You can't subpoena him, blah, 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 right? You can't sue him. You can't charge him with a crime and drag him into court. You can't do any of this. You can't interrogate him. You can't detain him. You can't do anything. You know, you can't arrest him. So the thought is that if the judge in New York, in this case later today, sentences Trump to, say he says, oh, you're going to get, 4 years in jail or something like that, which is his whole time as president, and you're a flight risk, and you're a millionaire, you got your own jet, you got residences in other countries, you could fight extradition, so I'm asking the court officers to detain you, you're going into custody, your sentence starts today. Now, he's not a seated president. So they could do it to him. They changed their mind once in the indefinite postponement of the sentencing. Now, we're going to have the sentencing before Trump is sworn in. But the judge came up with, well, I think the best thing to do is this. What do we do if the judge says today, the hearing's at 9:30 New York time. If the judge says today, well, I heard from a lot of people, and it appears that the best thing to do is to show that Trump is not immune from the law, blah, 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 and we're giving him 4 years in prison starting today. Can the Justice Department do anything about it? Well, I don't think Biden's Justice Department would. Do you? No. There's a 10-day window they'd have to do it before the 20th. So the Justice Department is going to basically say it's a state court. It's not our ruling. And then Trump's legal team, which there'd probably be at least 15 lawyers or, a large amount of lawyers with, legal aides and legal secretaries working on this, would file all sorts of emergency hearings in the Supreme Court, which I believe the Supreme Court would pay attention to because the consequences of this could affect the entire nation. But they just denied Trump yesterday. So what if they deny Trump today and they say this is a state court matter? You have no immunity now. They just ruled against him that he had no immunity in this hush money case. They never said he had immunity in that. They said he had broad immunity for what he did when he was in office. But this wasn't done when he was in office. It was done when he was running for office. That is not the same thing. There's no presidential immunity for a candidate for the presidency. So if the judge flip-flops, they flip-flopped already on him, and they do it again, what happens? Who the heck knows? This is unprecedented. Could it happen? Yes. Could Trump get out of it if it did? If he was president, I'm pretty sure. But if Biden's president, I highly doubt it. What happens? Would the Secret Service stop him? No, he doesn't have presidential immunity. He's a candidate. Maybe they would say we gotta go monitor his situation to protect him, and we don't know what's going to happen, and it's okay. Take 3 or 4 agents and have them sit on chairs outside his cell and inspect the food or whatever you want to do and protect them. You can carry your guns if you want, your Secret Service or whatever they tell them. Maybe they'll say no, you can't carry your guns, or maybe they would try to make a motion to house Trump in a military base to protect him as a former president, and he has secrets. I don't know. Nobody knows. It never happened. We don't know what will happen. What do I think is going to happen? I think they're probably going to do what they said and say there's going to be no probation, jail, or fines. That's what I think. I could be wrong. Looking at it again yesterday and today, I think that's what they're going to do. Which just leaves Trump labeled as a felon, which does not prevent him from being the president. The Constitution has no law against that. Now, somebody might try something to stop him in the Supreme Court, but there's no basis in law to do it, so I don't think it would work. But on the other hand, it could turn into the biggest catastrophe America has seen in hundreds of years. And it's happening 9:30 in the morning today in the New York time in the court. Now, Trump said previously he would go to his sentencing hearing. But then I heard he was still in Mar-a-Lago yesterday. But it's only, a 2-hour flight. He was in Mar-a-Lago, and they're thinking he may not come to the sentencing hearing. What happens if he doesn't show up? Well, then the plans of the court can do one of two things. If the judge is not going to give him any jail time, probation, or money, he might just read the decision and close the case, and Trump's not there, and that's the end of it. That could happen. Or he could say that he doesn't want to complete the sentencing without the defendant there. I doubt he would, because generally they don't require a defendant to come to the sentencing, generally speaking. I know of instances where they would be in jail and they didn't bother, they didn't want to go, and they knew that the judge was going to drop on them, and they just didn't want to go, and that was it. And they got sentenced while they just stayed in jail, and that was it. So what could happen is catastrophic, and what's likely to happen is probably not catastrophic at all. But Trump is squirming to get out of this before the 20th. I mean, he is really motivated. I think the word is scared. He knows the judge could flip-flop on him and just say, put him in handcuffs. He's in prison starting now. He's a flight risk, which he really is. He's very wealthy, has his own jets, has houses around the world. So if he doesn't go to the hearing and the judge tries to force him to come to the hearing, well, then they got to do extradition from Florida, which he could fight, and he's friends with the governor of Florida, and he probably could win and jam it up for 10 days, hands down. Then when he's president, they can't put him in chains or anything. That's another way this could play out. But the government might say, the government being Biden, well, they're going to put him in jail, and how could he be president? And, see, let's look at other things. North Korea has a bunch of artillery staged at South Korea for a long time now. Now they put 250 missile launches. Each launcher holds 4 missiles. So it's a pod. So you push the launch button and 4 missiles from each of these 250 launchers goes off. They put them right at the border of the DMZ, their border with the demilitarized zone. These missiles can reach deep. They go about 150 miles or more, I think 180 miles, into South Korea. They could hit the American military base there, which is very, very, very large. Before all the trouble started, they had 28,000 soldiers there. Well, all the different military combined, Air Force, Navy, everything, But I think now the number's probably at least 35,000, if not more. They could definitely rain down on that. They could work deep into South Korea. Now, their artillery could go 40 miles into South Korea. Of course, they use rocket-propelled shells, and they could rain all kinds of death and destruction close to the border with those, and then launch their more intermediate range missiles and cause more trouble. Now, these missile launches are reloadable, but it's going to take time. You don't reload a quad pod with missiles in 15 minutes. It'd probably take them a couple hours. But they're staging, and maybe Iran is positioning themselves, at least verbally, for saying, we're going to attack Israel. Maybe they know through the Biden administration what's going to happen. And the Houthis in Yemen are saying that they may resume the fighting with Israel at the end of the 60 days, which is January 26th. And the people in Gaza basically told Trump essentially to take a long walk on a short pier. They said, no, we're not the problem with the hostage release, it's Israel. And they're not playing straight. Now what they want is they want Israel to completely withdraw from Gaza, end the war permanently. Even then, they're not going to release the hostages. They're going to release a few of them after Israel completes their full withdrawal. But they're not giving us a list of the living hostages. They're not letting us, or the Red Cross or any neutral party, confirm that the hostages are alive. They're not telling us how many hostages are alive. We still think there's 100 hostages that we know are not dead, and we don't have the bodies in them and so forth. But how many of those 100 are alive? We do not know. If Hamas had 5 or 10 hostages and they went and told Israel, hey, we got 9 hostages, these are their names, the Israeli people will go crazy. And there will be calls for the sheer destruction of Gaza. And they would wait till Trump got in. And Trump is constantly telling people that all hell's going to break out in Gaza if the hostages are not back before January 20th. And they're not going to do it. They're not moving. They're not giving any list of the hostages alive. So they're defying Trump. So you see activity from Iran, you see activity from Gaza, you see activity from Lebanon, and you're seeing activity from North Korea, not much from China. Maybe they're waiting to see if Trump really does get locked up and he's not going to be the president. Maybe they're just having advisors telling them stuff like I'm telling you. Or maybe the Biden administration told them what's really going to go down. And these rumors maybe reach Trump, and that's why Trump is scurrying around like crazy with all sorts of court motions. I do not think he has any more options to use the court. 9:30 in the morning, it's going to go down. I mean, there's things like emergency motions, and this stuff does exist. They use it in death penalty executions, last minute appeals, and but I don't think this is going to. I think the legal options for Trump stopping the sentencing today are over with. It's going to go down. Now, Trump may not show up, which means that Trump is not going to get put in jail. And getting him put in jail is going to take a lot of work. Okay. So it's just a matter of some hours and we'll find out what happened. Again, my favorite position here is Trump's not going to jail. But I have to leave room for this as a possibility. I think I'm the only one talking like this, but I think it's a possibility. They're setting him up, and he knows it. Okay, the California fires. Oh, they're spreading. On the big fires, they have zero containment. There was some reports of arsonists. I don't know the whole story, but there was, there's a fire, and then some idiots went around trying to start other things on fire, and several people were arrested. They're doing looting. They're talking about bringing the National Guard in, which I think they are. So they might put the area under martial law. They might. People are afraid that they might do what they did with Hurricane Katrina and go door to door and take guns away from people. They did that. People were refusing. They had gunfights with National Guard and stuff like that. Do I think this is likely to happen? No. No. A hurricane and a fire are two completely different events, and hurricanes don't make smoke that's toxic, that'll kill you, and I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to use the National Guard to help preserve the peace, like enforce quarantines and stop people from looting areas that were ordered to be evacuated where there is no fire. They're just afraid a fire may spread there, and they don't want to deal with last minute evacuations and traffic jams. So they get the people out hours or a day or two early. So there have been instances of opportunist criminals going into those areas that are not on fire, but they've been evacuated, and robbing houses, and the police have gotten them. So the National Guard might be called for that. I don't think they're going to use them for firefighting. They probably use them to protect the areas that were evacuated. And I don't think they're going to do any gun confiscations or any craziness. They're worried about the place burning down. And that's their big fear. And they're protecting the houses of the rich and famous. And that's why they want to deploy the National Guard. Los Angeles itself has not been burning. Los Angeles proper. It's the edge of Los Angeles and the surrounding communities. Now, there was another city that went up. I think Universal Studios, which is in Studio City or something, I think I read something Universal Studios is in trouble. Maybe it's just being evacuated, but I didn't get a firm report um, about that yet. I just heard it mentioned. Um, they're saying that 5,300 structures are destroyed. They have zero containment on the big fires. And as of, I think, last night, it was 20,000 acres burned. So this is not out in the wilderness, although they're calling them wildfires correctly, I guess. But it's not out in, middle of nowhere. This is pretty serious. I think it's called West Hills. Is the new fire, West Hills. So the amount of damage at 5,300 structures burned is insanely high. And with zero containment on the big fires, guys, this figure could easily multiply 2, 3, 4, 5-fold. We don't know. Their winds hitting hurricane speed winds are happening down there in terms of gusts. I heard up to 100 miles an hour. Now, hurricane speed winds start at 75 miles an hour. That's strong wind. So I'm not really high on saying this was the result of arson. I don't believe that. Some jerk copycats running around, if you want to call them copycats, I don't know if that's accurate, trying to start more fires is, I don't think that's all that relevant to anything as to the cause of the main fire. Do I think North Korea is going to attack South Korea? Well, they're staging for it, that's all I could say, but we see that a lot around the world. Nothing, many, many, many times, nothing comes of it. So I'd be slow to say that, but they're definitely provoking. I don't know what they're going to do or not going to do. Hard for me to say. We've seen them provoke before, so. Let's see what else I got here in my notes. Let's take a look at scriptures for fires in America and the daughter of Babylon. I gotta find the verse. Jeremiah 50:32. And the most proud shall stumble and fall, and none shall raise him up, and I will kindle a fire in his cities, plural, and it shall devour all round about him. Well, there we have the scripture. Now, the timing for this looks pretty good, quite good. The fire is in and about 4 or 5 reasonably decent cities in California. Could this be the first of these fires he's going to kindle? I can't tell you one way or the other. It could be. It's like the perfect fire. No rain coming for many days. It's dry. The governor did things with the water to provoke this. The winds are driving it on. The firefighters are failing to contain it. It's about or around about some cities, and in some cities, it's a good fit. Perhaps God would start with a high profile target like this one, which has the Hollywood movie stars, entertainment people there, wealthy people there. People living in luxury and splendor without a care in the world because they've got their money, you know. It'd be a pretty good target to get the attention of the people, wouldn't it? Sure. New York City would be another big one, but how do you do New York City? I mean, what are you going to burn? You'd have to get the buildings burning. They don't have, I mean, they got Central Park, but there's no houses on the edge of Central Park. When you go to Central Park, there's large streets that separate the houses from the park. I mean, these are streets that are, you know, in some cases, you know, 60, 100 feet or more from the park itself. So, and the park is not heavily wooded at all, because it used to have a lot of brush and trees years ago, but that was giving opportunistic hideouts for bad guys to do stick-ups and robberies. So they stopped that. They took it down. In the I think the 60s, the early 60s, New York City Parks Department, when I grew up there in the Bronx, went to the different parks and they stripped out a lot of the vegetation, the brushes, the trees. Not all the trees pretty much were left. So people couldn't hide in there. They made it open. So you'd see a tree and then 8 or 10 feet away another tree, and you couldn't hide in between the trees. You could hide behind a tree, but not in between them. So they made it rather open so nobody could jump out of the bushes. As you know, we were kids then, and we didn't think it was a good thing because it stripped the place and made it look worse. You know, it wasn't a good idea, but they wanted to control crime. What used to happen in our neighborhood is there was a lot of Puerto Ricans that, you know, from, if you're in Puerto Rico after, I think it was 1959 or 60, whatever it was, when they made them, you know, part of the United States, they get a U.S. passport. So they could just come to the U.S. anytime they want and stay there as long as they want, is my understanding. So they were just coming up to New York, living in ghettos that used to be Jewish ghettos. They were moving out. Well, they were Jewish housing. And when did that happen? That happened after World War II. This whole thing started after World War II. I knew some Puerto Rican people. They were fun people. I used to like them. They had an interesting outlook on life, you know. They worked hard and partied hard. A good amount of them got sucked into the system of welfare, and they started just having large amounts of children and just living on welfare, and that was a shame. They stopped with education and all that. That's all they wanted to do was sit in welfare, and you know that was bad. And that got spread because then you started getting into second, third, fourth generation welfare. So the children are coached by the family when they grow up how to get on welfare. They know exactly how to do it. They don't pay attention going to school because it's just a waste of their time. They get children if they're female. If they're male, they could hook up with a woman and have children, and then when they have a few children, the welfare checks get rather large. And they pay their rent, they pay their utilities. I remember they were buying cars for them. Now to get a car, I believe you needed to have a job or something. But whatever happened to the buses and the subway, they needed cars. I don't get that. They were getting them used cars. I don't know if that still goes on. They get free medical, they get dental, they charitable dental thing going on. They basically would get, if the kids went to school and they were on welfare, the kids would get a hot breakfast. So the kids would go to school before the other kids, and there'd be a little cafeteria for them, and they would get a hot meal. They would also get the school lunch program, which would be another meal, and they got that for free also. And then the kids could stay after school. They didn't have to pay for the after school program. And they gave the kids a snack after school, which wasn't much. I think it was a container of milk or juice and some cookies or something, but at least they gave them some food. And then in the middle of the day in New York, like around 10, they would distribute milk. You could get chocolate milk or regular milk and a straw. And if you signed up for it, you had to pay, but they wouldn't have to pay. Anybody on welfare didn't have to pay. So they'd get a free breakfast, then they'd get a container of milk, then they'd get a free lunch, then they'd get a snack after school, and then they'd have to go home. And so they got 2 meals in them in case the parents weren't going to feed them. The parents would want to spend the money on drugs or liquor or something like that. This happened a lot. So at least they kept the kids. But the kids would, when they got older, they gave up on going to school. They'd go to school probably through junior high school, and once they got into high school, they'd start cutting, and then they would get into problems with truancy, and basically they just went the welfare route, and they used to borrow each other's children when the social worker came. No, we didn't have a birth certificate. We just gave birth at house. We never had a certificate, and stuff like this. And they were milking the welfare system. Not all of them, though. A lot of them worked. So I used to know some of them. I had a summer job once at a hat company, a women's hat manufacturing company. These are friends of my mother, and I needed a summer job in college, so I worked there packing hats and boxes and stuff. And all the guys working there were Puerto Rican, and I got along great with them. We had a lot of fun, And the guy that was like the crew leader was a real character. He was in Vietnam. He was a cook, and he was telling me stories when the enemy was coming, and they were taking kitchen knives out. Because it was going to be hand-to-hand combat, and he had a nice car. He had a new Camaro. Camaros at the time, this was in the latter 60s or 66, 67, around there. And he'd go home after work, and they partied. They lived in what was a ghetto, and in the warm weather, most of them didn't have air conditioning. They went out in the streets, they played their music, they danced, they partied, they drank. they were they knew how to have fun. They were not Bible followers. They were immoral and stuff like that. But I they weren't crooks, criminals, or murderers or muggers. So some went down the drain with the welfare system, and others would work. You know, it's just I guess you got rotten apples. That's all you can you know that's all you can do. So they came up freely, and then people made fun of them. They had that movie West Side Story. I had an uncle that knew the guy that wrote West Side Story, and we believe he believes he inspired the guy to write it. Because at the time, my uncle was teaching in the ghetto schools in New York, in the public school system. Um, was a interesting scenario, but they were saying in West Side Story they had songs, and they were singing. One of the songs was "Everything Free in America," and that was the welfare thing. Was there's a place for welfare. People that really can't work, like they're crippled, they're blind, they're deaf, maybe, or they got birth defects, and and then you got people that are, you know, they get on welfare because they're obese. They get on welfare because they're an alcoholic or a drug addict. This is silly, but they do it. But they do it. They get votes. And it's these welfare kind of people that probably got Trump convicted. I don't know. But I mean, I'm thinking maybe. I don't think the welfare people bother going to jury duty. Maybe they have to. I don't think they. I don't know. They get you for jury duty if you sign the poll to vote. If you sign up to vote, they send you jury duty notices. But they don't serve you, they just mail it to you. And I don't even think they use registered mail. I don't know. I got called for jury duty a few times. Once they called me on a criminal case, and I just wrote them back. I was a law enforcement officer at this sheriff's department at this time, and that was it. They kicked me out. They said, "No, forget it. You don't come." And then they had another one, and then they restructured me to go for jury duty on a hearing where they were going to. The family was trying to commit the mother for not being of a sound mind, and they put me on as an alternate juror in case someone got sick or something. So I was down there for a few hours, and the case closed, and I don't remember what happened. That was it. That was the only 2 shots they ever took at me for that. I didn't. That was it. I never really had to deal with it other than that. Generally, if you go down there and you're ex-law enforcement, on criminal cases, the defense, what guys would tell us, no, I don't believe, they would tell the defense attorney when he questioned the jurors, say, no, I don't believe any police officer would lie about anything like that. And they'd say, dismiss, they get rid of you. The prosecutor would keep you, but the defense guy would use his challenges and get rid of you. They didn't want any cops in criminal cases. And they really didn't like you in civil cases either. They would try to get rid of you in a civil case either. They just didn't want cops sitting on the jury. I think it's probably still this way. They just don't want cops in this. Cops know too much about the court system, and they don't get intimidated and stuff like that. So if we go to back into that scripture, it says, The most proud shall stumble and fall. Well, we're not seeing that right now. Let's look the words up. Stumble. Strong's number 3782. Let's see how Strong's throws it into English. Add a weakness to, it means to stumble, to waver. It's well translated. Stumble and fall. The word for fall is Strong's number 5307. Let's see how Strong's does it in English. It got a million meanings. It can mean fall, like fall down or lay down. It can mean perish, like soldier falls, means he's gone. It can mean to slay. So it's saying here, the most proud shall stumble and fall. We're not really seeing this in America, are we? No. 10 people died in the fire, and none shall raise him up. All right. What's raise him up mean? To rise. That means when they go down, they're not going to get up. All right, now it says, and I will kindle. Let's take a look at that. Yitzat. It just says one word. I will kindle is not in the text. Okay? It says one word, and let's check the real meaning of this word. To burn, set on fire. Set on fire. But so what it says, the most proud shall stumble and fall, and none, let's check that word, iron, yeah, you could say none, raise them. So no one's going to help them get up when they fall. And then it doesn't say, and I will, not raise, and then it says, kindle, fire, cities, burn up, all round about him. The word him is not in the text. So it says, burn up, all should be call. Yes. All round about. So it might be saying that the fire that Jehovah's going to kindle in the cities is going to burn round about, and the most proud will stumble and fall, and none's going to raise them. No one's going to raise them up. Now, the word for prow is Sidon, which is arrogant, prideful. So the movie stars are definitely that way, and the rich are that way. So can you see something like maybe this is the beginning of it? I don't know. I mean, we've seen California wildfires before, but this one seems a little different. Because it's dry, no rain's coming, the governor messed with the water supply, and it's got hurricane force winds. This is a little unusual. Not a little, it's seriously unusual. So maybe this is the beginning of it. I'm leaning towards that. But the jury is still out. We got to see if this, normally they'll eventually get over on the fire, or the fire will burn itself out. Normally. And then if that's it and we don't see any more fires pop up anywhere else, well, then we could just assume it was a one-off. But it still could be the Lord starting the fires. And this could just be the first one. And it's a rather unique location because you're getting the rich and the famous. On my Telegram the other day, I published a list of various celebrities that had to evacuate or had their houses burned out. And there was about 10 that were household word celebrities. You knew who they were. Movie stars and entertainment people. So, look, they evacuate, and many of them have another house someplace. So they evacuate. They go to the airport, they fly to their other house, they go to a hotel for a day or two to see what happens, then go to their other house. Or they get themselves a nice hotel and they just stay there. They don't care if it's $400, $500, $600 a day. It doesn't affect them. Now they generally are going to lose a lot of their personal property. Their pictures, their paintings, their clothing, all the different things they've had, It's not a nice thing to go through, but I don't know yet. Let's go previous verses. Behold, I am against thee. This is verse 31. I am against thee, O thou most proud. There we are with the proud again. Saith Jehovah, Elohim. Saith Adonai Jehovah, of armies or hosts. For thy day is come, the time that I will visit thee. And then what's the first thing we see? The most proud stumble, fall, no one raises them, kindle fire in his cities, shall devour all around about him. It sounds to me like this is the start of the destruction of the daughter of Babylon. It looks good. I can't guarantee it yet. It looks pretty good. And what's the next verse? Thus, this is verse 33. Thus saith Jehovah of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together, and all that took them captive held them fast. They refused to let them go. Now, what does this verse tie us to? Jeremiah 30, verse 11, where he's going to destroy all the nations that he scattered the Israelites into over time. Jeremiah 30 is tied with the birth pangs. So this is pointing directly to Jeremiah 30:11, which is also the same basically in Jeremiah 46, verse 28. Church never teaches that. Sorry, that's their problem, not mine. Now we're in verse 34. Their Redeemer is strong, Jehovah of hosts is his name. He shall thoroughly plead their cause. Okay, is that really what it means? No. The word they translate as plead, Strong's says toss, grapple, wrangle, hold a controversy, or defend, or be an adversary. He shall plead. He shall defend is maybe a better word. Their cause. And the word for cause is Strong's number 7379, Reeve. What the heck? That's not translated right. Yes. It's plead their cause is a strife or a fight. So the Lord's fighting for them, is what it's really saying. That he may give rest to the land and disquiet the inhabitants of Babylon. Well, you see, has he been giving rest to the land of Israel? Well, Gaza can practically do nothing to us anymore. Lebanon is quiet, Syria is quiet, Iraq is quiet, Iran is quiet, and Yemen is trying, but they're not getting very far. So it looks like the rest to the land is approaching, which is why I keep saying, I think when that happens, Elijah's going to start working openly, which is really quick. The same time we're reading the rest to the land, he's disquieting the world. Well, America, in this case, the daughter of Babylon, is disquieting them. So again, I take another look at the Trump thing later today, and I wonder, I don't think it's going to go catastrophic, but it could. Now we're in verse 35. A sword is upon the Chaldeans, that's the people in America, they're the witches. Those are your entertainment people, your movie stars, your corporate moguls, your government people, stuff like that. Saith Jehovah, and upon the inhabitants of Babel, even upon her princes, and upon her wise men. A sword is upon the liars, and they shall dote. A sword is upon her mighty men, and they shall be dismayed. A sword is upon their horses, and upon their chariots. A chariot is a war, vehicle. A tank, mobile artillery, Humvee, armored personnel carrier, maybe even trucks and stuff. And upon all the mingled people that are in the midst of her. That's America, the melting pot, mingled people. And they shall become as women. A sword is upon her treasures, and they shall be robbed. Now, that's telling us about the sleeper agents. A sword is upon her treasures, and she shall be robbed. There's not missile attacks coming from submarines, or drones crashing and blowing up, or aircraft dropping bombs. This is troops on the ground. That's who you need to loot the treasures. Not idiots in the air dropping bombs. The sleeper agents will probably precede these other attacks, or maybe not. Maybe they'll coincide, or some bombings followed up by the sleeper agents. But the sleeper agents are going to look to loot, pillage, and plunder the place. There are some countries that are very, very rich, like Saudi Arabia. But who's rich in Saudi Arabia? A tenth of 1%, maybe, or 100th of 1%. Just the royal family, and they're the only real rich ones, and the oil people. There's not that many. There's a mountain of poor people in Saudi Arabia. And the same in UAE. The UAE has become the playground of the mega rich. Why? Oh gosh, a million reasons. They've got very, very fine food restaurants there. They don't have the gambling and the shows that Las Vegas has. That's missing. The food is not missing. They got anything you want worldwide for food. They've got very plush, luxurious houses and condominiums or apartments. They got world-class, super-duper stuff, okay? They got entertainment, theme parks, amusement parks, all of that stuff. They have great stores and malls that the rich like to buy. If you want to buy $40,000 pocketbooks, they got them. You want to buy a suit of clothes for $6,000 or $8,000, that's it. You want to buy a $500,000 watch, there's tons of places there that sell watches for hundreds of thousands of dollars and jewelry for millions of dollars. The UAE operates real tax-free environment, duty-free. I was watching a video, someone was saying, let's go supercar shopping in Dubai. So they got, supercars, which are at the low end used. This guy was selling used. The used supercars are probably going to start at $80,000 or $100,000. And most of them, they're used, are going to be $250,000 and up to over $1 million. And there's tons of, they're in a row. There's tons of these. You could find all the crazy exotic cars, the limited edition Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Bugattis, and all of this. Bugatti has just come out with a new model now. Those are cars that are over $1 million. They can get up to $3 million for a car, for a 2-seat car. Most of you would retire for the rest of your life on the price of what they spend on a car. Now, the latest version is putting out 1,800 horsepower. You have any idea how crazy that is? It's sheer insanity. Okay? I had a couple of Porsche turbos when I was in the world years ago, and they were putting out about 419 horsepower. And they were so fast, they were scary. They really were. They had all-wheel drive, they had a computer that kept you out of trouble for skidding and everything like that. You couldn't take trips in them because you didn't have any place to put any serious luggage. It had a back seat you could pull up with. To say they were seats was a push. They had little padded areas with seat belts and lap belts, shoulder belts. So people could sit in there. So I have had people sit in the back, but it's rather crowded and congested in there, but it can't be done. And the car was so fast. It was scary. Now they got Porsches with 700 horsepower. Now the difference isn't that much. My Porsche would go 300 kilometers an hour, which was about 180 miles an hour. Did I ever get it up near that fast? Heck no, nowhere near that, but I'm not crazy. You can't drive on streets at those speeds. You're taking your life in your hands and other people's lives. People look in the mirror before they change lanes, going from the right to the left lane. And they look and they don't see any cars there, and then they start to go over. If somebody's running 140 miles an hour, not even 180, they're coming up on them so fast, the guy doesn't see you, and then, you're going to have a collision at those high speeds. You're probably going to die, although the Porsches do hold up rather well in accidents. They got monocoque construction, basically got a roll cage built into the frame of the car. But, what do you want to do things like that for? You are being an idiot. And you're not being fair to other people. Okay? Now, that car I had would go 0 to 60 in 3.9 seconds. The G-forces of that were incredibly hard. Okay, it push you back. Now they got them, these Bugattis go 0 to 60 in about half that time, in 2 seconds. So that car probably in 4 seconds from dead stop, as a guess, would probably be going 120, 130 miles an hour with 1,800 horsepower. What do people want that for? You go to get a tune-up on a car like your Bugatti, they generally take the engine out of the car to tune it up. What do you think they charge you for something like that? I would guess $15,000, $20,000 for a tune-up. Oh, they'll change your oil and lube it too. And you probably got to leave the car there for a day or 2 days. You might drop, on this car, which is probably $2 million for the 1,800 or more, you might be dropping $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year just to keep the thing going. Tires are very specialized tires. They wear out quick and easy. The tires probably a set $10,000. If the car's off warranty and something breaks, like in the electronics, it might charge you $40,000, $50,000. I'm serious. And there's people that buy these things because they got incomes of, a few $1,000,000 a month. So they want one of these things to show everybody, look at me, how great I am. I got a $2 million car. Where do you park it? You park a car like that in a mall or supermarket parking lot, some jerk's going to scratch it with his key, likely. Maybe not in the UAE. There's speed limits in the UAE. They don't let you run around like that. There's speed limits in Beverly Hills. People buy these things in Beverly Hills. And they drive to the restaurant and stuff like that, and they park the car. Some of them normally you're going to use valet parking. So at least the valet can keep an eye on the car, You probably got to tip the valet $20 or $50 to keep a good eye on your car, if not 100. And where you're going to get in Beverly Hills, and you're going to put the car in gear, and you're going to accelerate to 120 miles an hour in Beverly. If they catch you, they're going to tow your car, put you in jail. The judge is going to give you all kinds of grief. Oh, they're not going to sentence you. But, they could. Nobody's going to do that. What do you need the car for? It's just these people want to show the other rich people that they're one of them. And do you think these people, on my Porsches, I used to keep them about 1.5 years, I think. And then I would, when I got rid of them, they usually had about 3,000 miles on them. And that's rather typical. Now, the Porsche Turbo is a car you can drive every day. You can use it like a Chevrolet. They're probably the only supercar, and they're the lowest level supercar. They're not anywhere near as much fun to whip around as a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or a Bugatti or anything. No, they're not that much fun. And they don't look anywhere near as good. But, the things like the roof was made, the liner in the roof was leather, the seats were leather, the door sides were leather, the dashboard was leather. But you were in a small little car. And the worst part of it, people hate you when you drive a car like that. They get behind you with a pickup truck and tailgate you to make you nervous. They take their junky cars and they pull out in front of you. They try to, they annoy you. I had a Corvette. They did that with me with my Corvette too. That's why I got rid of it. I didn't like it. It's a plastic car. And in terms of it being me and another friend of mine. This is before I was in the world, but I had, I was a believer, but I had a lot of money at the time. But the um, the Corvette is the most practical of these supercars if you live in America, because when you go to the Chevrolet dealer and you need a tune-up, it might be a few $100. It's not going to be thousands of dollars, and parts are cheap, and you can get parts, and the car is going to do relatively what the other supercars are going to do. They're not going to look as cool, but they look plenty good and they drive plenty good, and they're really nice cars. But they're plastic. But you know, if you look at pictures of people that get hit in these supercars, Lamborghinis and Ferraris, they get clobbered. The only supercar that I know of that's really going to hold up in an accident is the Porsches, and the Mercedes will too. Mercedes generally doesn't make very many models that get up into the high speed range. But anyway, so the UAE is this new playground for the super rich and all that. What happens if Yemen attacks Saudi Arabia and the UAE, which they might do? So right now, Yemen can't attack Israel because their missiles got destroyed. So the question is, do they have missile factories that are still intact? They're going to make more missiles and resume with us. I don't know. They might get hit again. So it's interesting what happened. China's been very low-key, playing their cards close to the chest, but they are cutting internet cables. Russia is very aggressive with Ukraine. That hasn't stopped. And Ukraine's extremely aggressive with Russia, inflicting a lot of damage inside Russia. And Biden is still being his own dumbbell self. They're talking now, Bernie Sanders has got a bill that's being approved, they think, where Social Security recipients are going to get an increase every month of up to $3,000. Now, the increase is based on how much the Social Security payout is and how many years they paid into the system and stuff like that. So some people might get an increase of $2,200 and some people might get $3,500. But this revolutionizes the system. See, in Spain, before their economy collapsed, now we're talking about going back to around 2010, roughly, someplace in there. They were retiring people at age 50. In America, it's basically 66 to get your full Social Security, or you can go out at 62 with a much less payout. Or you could wait till you're 70 and get a much higher payout. But most of the people, I think, go out at either 62 or 66. They get the Social Security. Spain was giving them the equivalent of $3,000 a month around 2010 with full medical at age 50. Now they went bankrupt. They pushed it too far. But $3,000 a month back then for Spain is a pretty good living. So they could stop working, move to the coast where there's a beach, get a house, and go to the beach every day. Well, how are you going to finish your life off just going to the beach every day? But anyway, they were able to go live in other countries. It was enough money for them to do things. The American Social Security is basically get by the skin of your teeth. The limit used to be $2,500, but they bumped it, and maybe the people getting $2,500 are getting closer to $2,900 or $3,000 now. They're getting by a lot better, but they're still just getting by. Now, if they paid off their house, they paid off their car, their furniture, they have no debt, they have savings, and they get $3,000 a month. Well, what does that mean? It means they can pay their property tax, their car insurance, buy gasoline, buy food, pay their utilities, go to the movies, go out to eat. You know, they got a much better system. And for people that were fortunate enough to be able to pay off their house. But if they didn't pay off their house, and they're not doing that well. Places like Norway would give people, I believe it was 65% of their pay. Well, it had a cap, but it was rather generous. So, you know, you would see people in Norway go out with, you know, $50,000, $65,000 a month or something like a year. Probably 50 to 60,000 was the limit, something like that. So they would go traveling. You used to bank, well, before the war and COVID, they used to be coming to Israel all the time, a lot of them. So a lot of countries had realistic retirement, and America never did. But are they really going to pass this? They're talking like they will. I don't know what. I mean, it's shocking. I mean, it's shocking if this actually happens. I mean, that means 3,000 additional. So that means you're going to see people pulling down $5,500, $6,000 a month in Social Security. What does that mean for them? Well, it means they can go take cruises, they can take vacations, they could live well. Not great, but you're gonna, let's put it this way, comfortable. They could join a golf course if they wanted to. They could join a tennis club. They could join gyms. They could have decent cars. You know, the banks and the credit people will give them all kinds of credit now because they know every month they're going to get a generous check, so that they'll give them very high lines of credit. So some of these people will probably get in trouble. I would, you know, I don't know if it's ever going to finally go through and the president's going to sign it, but there's a lot of talk about it. I don't understand that. I don't believe America has it in them to do anything like this. But we've heard talk of a guaranteed income for Americans and stuff like that. So maybe this is a prelude to a guaranteed income. They want to see what it does. Would it help the economy of America? Yeah. These people are very unlikely to just save all that money. There would be more likely to travel. You know, you got to understand, they're retired people, and some of them are in not great shape, so they're not going to travel. They like staying home. They like, you know, maybe working in the garden for an hour and then go home and take a nap, or, you know, go outside and barbecue some lunch and then come in, or sit by their pool, or, you know, whatever they want to do, or go to a movie or go shopping. And others, you know, are active and they're going to want to travel. So they're going to want to go buy a Winnebago. They're going to want to go to different places in Florida and stuff. A lot of people don't know this, but you can retire. I mean, it's a lousy word, but you can, if you go on a cruise ship and you pick the older cruise ships, not the brand new ones. You got to go ships that are 4 or 5 years old. They keep ships usually about 20 years, 15 anyway. But even if the ship's 12 or 14 years old, they maintain them, they rebuild them and stuff like that. For some reason, unbeknownst to me, the best food that the cruise has to offer is not on the older ships. It's on the brand new ones that are 1, 2, 3 years old. After about 3 years, they're no longer the front runner of the cruise line. But for the first 2, probably 3 years, they're going to keep really good food on that ship. But the price to cruise on these older ships is could be a third or less even of what you're going to get on the brand new ships. So they could get, now you got to remember, when you're on a cruise ship, you have all your meals covered, all your food completely covered, right? You have the gym. Usually they're quite adequate. They even have free weights on these ships, believe it or not. And they have tons of treadmills, tons of bicycles. They have the machines. You got jacuzzis, you got swimming pools. The swimming pools are, some ships have lap pools where you have the water resistance, but that's not common. The swimming pools are typically no good for laps, so you could forget that one. They have a jogging deck which you could walk or run on. They have basketball games, and most retired people aren't going to do that. So I understand you can get these cruises for, if you look hard, you might be able to cruise the whole month for about $2,000, $2,500 for two people even. It's not a lot of money. You got to go for the older ships, and you work with the cruise company. You get on one ship, right? And you just keep doing the same run with the ship, right? So you don't have to pack and leave and all that. So you get off at the islands if you want, or you stay on the boat. So in other words, they live on the boat. And when you take in the account the food, every night you got free entertainment. Every night you're in a country club, basically, right? You're in good weather if you're doing the Caribbean or the Mexico, Southern California, or Florida, and that kind of thing. You've got maid service 2-3 times a day. You got room service. If you need a doctor, they have medical facility on the ship. You've got to pay for it. There is insurance you could buy, but that's rather costly. But if you went out and looked for a 1-year travel policy, it might not be that bad. I don't know. I never did. But if you go to buy insurance for a week or two, it's not that great. But if you need an emergency, they'll take care of it, and then they'll airlift you or get you out of there. But I think you got to pay for it. I don't know what they do. If you're going to die, they probably just airlift you out of there anyway. I don't know. So if you're afraid about emergency medical care, it may not be the best deal for you. But if you had a shoulder problem, they'd be able to give you some medicine or something. If you had stomach disorder and that kind of thing. If you had a lot of heart problems or lung problems or kidney problems, probably wouldn't be a great idea. And people live on the cruise ship as retirement. So they're not paying rent, they're not paying utilities, they're not making car payments. This is caught on. They just go on the ship, and maybe every 3 months they change ships. But if you look around on these older ships, you can get $300 a week sometimes in an inside cabin. I've seen it, $300 a week. Now, that's by yourself in an inside cabin, so you don't have a window and stuff, so you got a little bit of an issue with your circadian rhythm. But it's going to probably, you're eating like a king all you want every day, and you got crackerjack entertainment every day, and you got a gym and a jogging track and a swimming pool and sun decks where you can lay outside, and you got interesting people, there's jacuzzis, there's tons of things to keep you entertained for the price of food. If you took one of their dinner meals and tried to price it in America at a restaurant, I'm thinking you probably have to go $35, $40 to get an equivalent meal. Okay, because you could at dinner just about every night have a nice steak or duck or big piece of fish or something. I mean, really nice meal. So if we just, to make it easy, go $40 times 7, you got $280. That's about what you're paying for the cruise. So, but you're also getting free breakfast, free lunch, free snacks, free juice, free coffee, shows that would cost a lot of money. That's what people are doing. You don't have to clean your room. They got washing machines on all the cruise ships now and dryers. So you go there and you put quarters, or I don't know, you put it on your charge card, I guess. And, it probably costs you $1 or $2 to run a load, and then another $1 or $2 to dry it, You got a cabin steward cleaning your room, making your bed, What's not to like? When the boat comes into port, you can leave your baggage in the cabin. The steward's not going to complain. Now, sometimes you have to change cabins if something could happen, but generally you can maintain several weeks in a row anyway in the same cabin. And if you go off the boat, you have no luggage, right? So you don't have to do much waiting in line. You just go you don't have to start with customs. You just go to immigration, show them your passport. Do you have any luggage? No, I'm recruising. I'm just going into town to get lunch or something. Oh, okay. Boom, stamp, goodbye. Then you come back and you show them your passport again. You don't show immigration your passport to get on the boat. You just show the passport to the cruise company, and then you get back on the boat. But if you don't want to bother with that, and you don't have any need to go offshore in America, you just go up to the swimming pool deck and hang around, or stay in your cabin, or whatever you want to do, and that's it. Usually they have everybody off the boat by about 9:30, 10 in the morning, and then people start coming on the boat even as early as 11 or 12 o'clock. It's not, not any big deal. But people would probably want to get off to go to like a drugstore, a supermarket, and buy staple items they might need. So that's another option, that if they up Social Security, people will gravitate to like crazy. Just live on cruise ships. It's been done for years now, and it could be as cheap as $300 a week a person. So if you're a couple, it may not cost 3 plus 3. It may cost 3 plus 2 or something. So maybe $2,000 a month, and you got great food, great entertainment, gyms, jogging tracks. You got maid service. You got all the food that's fantastic that you could possibly want. You got juice. You got coffee. You can't beat it. You're not going to be able to eat that well. I mean, you could eat in America for less money, but you're not eating anywhere near at the level you'd be eating at a cruise ship. Not even close. So, let's go back into Jeremiah 50. A sword is upon the Chaldeans. So that would mean that in my book, if it's a sword, the sleeper agents are launched, saith Jehovah, and upon the inhabitants of Babylon, and upon their princes, and upon their wise men. A sword is upon the liars. That's, you know what that is. And they shall dote. A sword is upon her mighty men, and they shall be dismayed. What is a mighty man? Let's take a look. Gibor, the strong. It can mean a lot. A sword is upon their horses and upon their chariots. That could be their war toys, and upon all the mingled people, the melting pot of America, that are in the midst of her, and they shall become as women. A sword is upon her treasures, and they shall be robbed. A drought is upon her waters, and they shall be dried up. Well, I don't think we've seen this. I'm not aware of it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm not seeing this. For it is the land of graven images, and they are mad upon their idols. Therefore, the wild beasts of the desert with the wild beasts of the islands shall. Well, that hasn't happened yet. As God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighboring cities, the neighboring areas. Now, that could mean Canada, Mexico, and the Caribbean islands, but does it really? I don't know. But it implies strongly that it will. That's, because it says, as God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighboring cities. Now, how were they overthrown? By fire. Well, it says fire and brimstone, sulfur stuff. Fire. Now, he says he'll kindle a fire in and around the same cities. He says, as God overthrew. Now, let's take a look at the words on this. Okay? It says, as God. No, it does not say that. It says Elohim, God. Overthrew. Let's check the words. Ma'bekah. Well, destruction is a good fit here. Better than overthrew. Destruction. Okay? So let's go back. Elohim, destruction. Elohim, destruction, Sodom, Gomorrah, and then it says neighbor cities. Let's check that word. Shaken. Let's see. It can mean neighbors or fellow citizens. So it's saying destroyed Sodom, Gomorrah. The word cities is not in there. It's saying inhabitants. It's saying overthrew Sodom, Gomorrah inhabitants, not the neighbor cities per se. It could be interpreted that way, though. You could define it that way. Thereof saith Jehovah, so shall no man abide there, neither shall the Son of Man dwell there. Behold, a people shall come from the north, and a great nation and many kings shall be raised up from the coasts of the earth. So they shall hold the bow, and the lance they are cruel, they will not show mercy, their voice shall roar like the sea, and they shall ride upon horses, and everyone put in array like a man to the battle against thee, O daughter of Babylon. The king of Babylon, that would probably be the president, hath heard the report of them, and his hands waxed feeble. Anguish took hold of him, and pangs as of a woman in travail. Behold, he shall come up like a lion from the swamp. Okay. So, yeah, we could get, it looks like with the fires has a good fit for the beginning of it, but I can't say certain yet. We got to see if there's more fires coming in close proximity. Let me look at the live stream for a moment. old Cadillacs are the best car. Around the late 1980s, I got my hands on a 57 Cadillac, and I rebuilt it, a lot of it, restored it to some extent. And the brakes were scary because they were drum brakes. The tires you got for that were, I got some pretty okay tires, but not great tires for that. I suppose because you got classic car tire dimensions that Michelin's, Pirellis, and Dunlops weren't making really good tires for that. The steering, it was like driving around on a sofa in your living room. And it was, the steering was not precise. It didn't have rack and pinion. It had worm and roller. And it had cool things. Like it was a 57. It had electric seats. It had electric door locks, electric windows. I think the vents were electric, the vent windows. I think it had a Wonderbar radio where you could hit a button and it would change the stations. But it was just an AM radio with a little speaker up there. I think it had a speaker in the back. It had leather seats, which I had to work on and repair. I had to rip the carpets out and buy new carpets and put them in. The trunk, when you went to close the trunk, you just pushed it a little bit and it would automatically close. There was a way to open it with pushing a button in the glove box, I believe. I sold the car. A relative found the car for me in Oregon. I was in California. I think we paid about $1,800 or something like that. And then I put a lot of time in it, work and money into it, and I sold it for about $6,000. It was a project, but they're not that much fun to drive. I had a 1970 Lincoln Mark III, and that was a car. It was like really riding on a sofa, and that had some drum brakes and more modern features and all that. But when you get into a modern car, there's no comparison, you know. Now, the sheet metal on the 57 Cadillac was something. It had heavy, thick metal. So if someone hit you, you had a lot of protection. But you didn't have the ability to maneuver with the steering. It didn't have the rack and pinion with the good tires and the good suspension. And you didn't have good brakes. You had drum brakes, mushy, slow brakes. It was, yeah. It's not up to standard with the new cars. They're not. Some of the older Cadillacs were fantastic. They had some they called, I think it was a Biarritz. It had a stainless steel roof. And they had some that were, I just had a regular Coupe de Ville, but they had some that had Eldorado, I think it was called. It had a longer wheelbase and had a big long back seat. And they had more luxury in there and stuff. But believe it or not, some of the real luxury cars were when they still made them. The Imperial, Chrysler Imperial, they were pretty plush. And the Cadillac Eldorados in the very late 60s into the 70s were really nice cars. I had a job where I had access to an Eldorado convertible in this, I think it was around a 73, 74 model. That was in New York City, and I was driving it around in the city. It was quite a car, you know. It had front wheel drive. It would handle. It had like a 500 cubic inch engine. It would haul out. It was plush, quiet. Actually, if you go back to around 69, 70, those Eldorados were like supercars almost, you know. So, you know, they, I think today the cars, the more modern cars today are better than any of the older cars. They got better safety features. They got the Tishinko stuff where the hood collapses and absorbs the energy in a front impact and a back impact. You know, they don't have that in the older cars. I think if you went back to the older cars, like pre-World War II luxury cars, you know, a Duesenberg, a Cord, those kind of cars, Rolls Royce, Mercedes, they were built out of metal that, man, it was probably 1/4 inch thick metal. You know, it was probably at least a 1/4 inch thick. And if someone hit you with one of those things, you had, you know, great ability to, you know, to absorb that impact. You had real heavy metal on that thing. And they were, in some ways, quite safe. But they had no, they didn't even put lap belts in those, which would have helped a lot. So at high speed, if you had an impact with anything at high speed, it was bad. But if someone hit you even up to 35 miles an hour, I would say, with that heavy metal, you'd probably get banged around a little bit, but you'd probably be pretty good shape. If you had one of those cars and put a seatbelt and a lap belt in it, it would have been, you probably would be able to survive all kinds of stuff, but people would get thrown out of their cars through the windshield sometimes. You would see accidents where people's shoes were still in the front seat, particularly in the passenger seat. Their shoes would still be there. It was a high-speed impact where they hit something and the car decelerated extremely fast, just in a few feet, and they would get flung out through the windshield with their shoes remaining in the car. If you talk to old highway patrol guys, they'll tell you about this, or police, you know, you'd see it. And you had to, when you went to an accident scene, you know, it's night and raining, you had to turn your flashlight on and walk around. If there were people there to tell you everybody's accounted for, you didn't have to. But if somebody said, no, I don't know where Mary is or Steve is, and you had to walk all over the place with a flashlight at night or in the daytime and look for the body that got flung out. And a lot of times they would be alive, you know. The old Lincoln Continentals, the 4 doors, the convertibles, those things were 6,000 pounds, and they were rather safe, even with just a lap belt. But if you had a lap and a shoulder belt in that, they'd be pretty safe. You didn't have the airbags, but you didn't really need them that badly in those kind of things. You know, they didn't have collapsible steering wheel columns, so people would get crushed against the steering wheel. A lot of the parts in the car, like the dashboard, the doors, the roof, were very hard metal. So they were kind of dangerous, you know. I don't think until well into the late 60s that the cars were really safe to drive at 70 miles an hour. I really don't think so. My father was an engineer, and he told me the same thing. The 50s and 60s cars were, you were overdriving, at 70 miles an hour, you were overdriving the capability of the car in terms of handling skidding, emergency braking and stuff. They weren't very good. They were big and mushy, and that wasn't really too good. So I'm going to take a break, and then we'll go into Revelation 17 and see if we get any insights. Chief got me hemmed in there. my wife got back from taking a run for shopping to this store that's so popular in Israel. Why, I couldn't tell you. It's called IKEA. That Scandinavian stuff. I went there once and I said I'd never go back again. They make you walk through so much real estate to change levels. They're like criminal. What they do. You got to walk. I mean, like 500-600 feet to get to the elevator to go to the next level. It's ridiculous. I mean, they're playing the Israeli public for suckers, and I just refuse to go there anymore. But she likes it, so she went there and they had a sale. She said it was so bad you couldn't move. So I think she just quickly aborted and came back. I don't think she had a great time. All right, so we're going to do Revelation 17 and see if we can get any fits here for what's going on with the fires and so forth. I don't think there are any good fits, but let's see what kind of things we could look for. So, and there came one of the seven angels which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. Now, let's drop right down to the last verse. No, Chief, I'll give you a piece of cornbread. I have a piece of cornbread. Revelation 17:18. The kid smelled it. Chief smelled it. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. It's a city. Now, the whole daughter of Babylon is not the city. That's the United States. The city is Washington, D.C. That's where all the embassies around the world are, in Washington, D.C. Okay? From the countries around the world, they're put in Washington, D.C. When they open up an installation in New York or L.A. or Miami, that's a consulate, not the embassy. A consulate is secondary to the embassy. The embassy is the most important. Giving Chief some little pieces of cornbread here, make him happy. Okay. Washington, D.C. is District of Columbia. Columbia is that woman on a pedestal, a flat-chested thing that looks like a woman holding the torch, the light, come to me on the light, on a pedestal. That's the whore. Just look at the Columbia Motion Pictures icon. Then compare it to the Statue of Liberty, which is built with the pillars just like a Greek and Roman temple. Just like the White House, just like the New York Stock Exchange, just like the Supreme Court. It's built like a Greek Roman temple. The pagan gods. Okay. So now we know who the whore is. I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. Waters are people, controlling people. Or it can mean all the waters that surround the United States, Gulf of Mexico, which Trump wants to make Gulf of America, Atlantic, Pacific, Great Lakes, 8,000 rivers, and probably thousands of lakes, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication. Now, that fornication is worshiping false gods, idols and stuff. committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. That's the worshiping false gods. It's a spiritual fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, decked with gold and precious stones, and this is all the wealth and riches, and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations. Now, there comes your abominations. Now, her cup was not full of, bacon and shrimp. Abomination is a spiritual defilement. And filthiness of her fornication. That's a spiritual fornication. It could be, physical fornication, but I don't think that's the meaning here. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, and the abominations of the earth. Now again, the abominations are the horrible things they do. It's not, eating shrimp and alligator tail and stuff like that, okay? And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints, with the blood of the martyrs of Yeshua. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. Remember, this whore's been around a long time. She was originally in the original Babylon. And the angel said unto me, Wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carrieth her. So she's dominating the beast. Which hath the 7 heads and the 10 horns. The beast that thou sawest was and is and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. So the beast he went to the bottomless pit, so he was not. And he comes up out of the bottomless pit, and you see that by reading Revelation 9 and Revelation 13. When he comes up out of the bottomless pit in Revelation 13, the woman's not coming up with him. And go into perdition. When Yeshua returns, him and the false prophet go alive into the lake of fire. And that's your perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not and yet is. The true believers are going to know who this jackass is. Sadly, the church is probably going to refer to the glory of God of Israel as the beast, if they're still around when he appears, and probably, or they may refer to the glory of God as Satan and Elijah and Apostle John, the 2 witnesses, as the beast and the false prophet. Because of the temple and the sacrifices and following the law, they'll say, oh, they're trying to put us under bondage. The law's dead. Don't think Satan didn't plan on that. Maybe he did, maybe that's over his head, I don't know. And here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are the 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. Those are your 7 continents. And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen. One is, and the other not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. Now, it's not BRICS, because BRICS is up to something like 28 members. Ain't BRICS. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them. For he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. And he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest where the whore sitteth are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. Well, fire. There you have fire. That's interesting. But now we're seeing the beast burn her with fire, not Jehovah. Interesting. For God hath put their heart to fulfill his will, and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And the woman which thou sawest, that great city, that's Washington, D.C., which reigneth over the kings of the earth. We'll go do the next chapter, 18, verse 1. And after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. So he lit the earth up. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. The birds represent demons. So America has fallen, it's heavily demonized, For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. That could only be America. And the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. And the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, let me check that word delicacies. I think it means strength. Could be delicacies also. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not of her plagues. Well, that voice has not yet sounded, has it? No. The voice comes from heaven. Come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her lawlessness. That's what the word iniquity means, lawlessness, not obeying the law. Is talking about the Constitution or the British law or the EU law. No, it's talking about God's law. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her, double according to her works, in the cup which she hath filled to her double. That's the cup of the wrath of the Lord, I would think. How much she hath glorified herself and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her. For she saith in her heart, I sit a queen and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. And that's how America behaves, you know. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day. Okay, the plagues come in a day. Death and mourning and famine. She shall be utterly burned with fire. There's the fire again. Let's check our words here. This is Greek. It's hopeless. Okay. Burned with fire. For strong is the Lord God. I guess that would be if we would do Hebrew. Adonai Yehovah, who judgeth her. And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning, standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babel, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. So Washington, D.C. is going to be attacked very suddenly, but it says plagues, so it could be more than just it could be multiple kind of attacks. And they're standing at a distance from the great city because it's burning. For in 1 hour, it comes in 1 day, 1 hour. So it's going to happen really suddenly. This is the attack on D.C., I believe. Standing afar off, so it appears they're on Earth, so they're outside of Washington, D.C., watching it. And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise anymore. Nobody's probably going to afford a lot of the stuff they sell. Their merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones and of pearls and fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet and all thine wood and all manner of vessels of ivory, and all manner of vessels of most precious wood, and of brass, iron, and marble, and cinnamon, and odors. That could be perfume, incense, and ointments. And that could be, perfumey things. It could be salves, creams, and frankincense, and wine, and oil, and fine flour, and wheat, and beasts. Now, that could be expensive racehorses and things, Brahmin bulls, I guess. And sheep, and horses, and chariots, and slaves. Well, I guess they have slaves, and it's just not publicized. And souls of men. Epstein Island. And the fruits that thy soul lusted after are departed from thee, and all things which were dainty and goodly are departed from thee, and thou shalt find them no more at all. So the fine niceties, the expensive jewelry, beautiful furniture, clothing, expensive cars, racehorses, and all that's gone, The merchants of these things which are made rich by her shall stand afar off for the fear of her torment, weeping and wailing. And they were standing afar off so they're able to see it, and saying, Alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls. For in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught, and every shipmaster and all the company in ships and sailors, and as many as trade by sea, stood afar off. And cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What city is like unto this great city? That's DC burning. And they cast dust on their heads, and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city wherein were made rich all that had ships. The sea by reason of her costliness, for in 1 hour is she made desolate. See, when Washington, D.C. goes, it's a given America's had it, right? Russia's trying to destroy Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, that type of thing. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and you holy apostles and prophets, for God hath avenged you on her. So the apostles and heaven and the prophets are rejoicing over the destruction of DC, apparently. Sadly, a lot of people will be crying about it, because that's going to end the evil in the world. And a mighty angel took up a stone, like a great millstone, and cast it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence shall that great city Babel be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. Okay, so let's check the word for violence, although this is the Greek. Yeah. Attack or violence, I guess. And a mighty angel took a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea, saying, thus with violence shall that great city Babel be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. And the voice of harpers and musicians and of pipers the voice of harpers and musicians and pipers and trumpeters shall be heard no more at all in thee. And no craftsman of whatsoever craft he shall be found any more in thee, and the sound of a millstone shall be heard no more in thee. And the light of a candle will shine no more at all in thee, and the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee, for thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived, and in her was found the blood of prophets and saints, and of all that was slain upon the earth. So those, that fire could be missiles or rockets. It could be God doing it, right? It doesn't say Russia shall launch arrows off the submarines and hit, I don't know what it is. We're not reading of explosions, we're reading of fire, so it could be the Lord doing it. Now, the Lord may start with Southern California, then it may go to Texas or Oregon or, Idaho or Virginia or I don't know where. It may just build up to a crescendo or something, I don't know. It's not just going to be DC. That's probably going to be a sign that it's finishing, So you're going to have the fires, you're going to have the invaders, you're going to have the people taking spoils and looting and killing people and breaking into the houses. This is going to be a general nightmare of a massive degree. And quite soon, too. And the church is, of course, extremely ill prepared for anything like this. We got a prayer request for N.E. Normandy Edward. N.E. Normandy Edward has a ringing in the ear. Please pray for N.E. Normandy Edward, that the ear be healed and the ringing stopped. For N.E. That's it. Thank you. Okay, let's see what's cooking in our live stream. All right, I'm not getting any questions, so I don't know. So we got At this point, remember the Lord says watch. Yeshua told us to watch. So we're watching what happens today in the New York City court with Trump. And let's watch this fire and see what happens. It's still 100% not contained in the big areas. I think some of the little stuff they may have got, but it's generally wild and running crazy, and it's going to get worse. No rain in sight, and it's the winds are still there. It's going to keep going. Hard to swallow this as an accident, especially when we look at the timing. So we wait and see, and we wait and see with Trump. And we'll know more. They got a new president in Lebanon. I don't know how Biden endorsed him, and I think Trump endorsed the same character. And of all the crazy things, the Hezbollah political leader, they have seats in the parliament in Lebanon. He endorsed the guy too. So what the heck is this? That doesn't sound right, but let's see what happens. He's a military guy. Israel's going to maintain at least 3 positions in southern Lebanon near settlements inside Israel. They said for many moons to come, like years. But we are starting to recede from other locations, letting the Lebanese army move in. Now, since this guy was a general of the Lebanese army, the thought is maybe he'll actually do anything. But my position on the Lebanese army is they're a pathetic bunch of sad sack soldiers, just goofballs, and they don't do anything, and they're afraid to do anything. So we'll see what happens. I don't know what will happen. Hezbollah is threatening on the 26th of January to start up with us again. But let's see what happens. They've lost at least 90, if not 98 or 99% of their ability to get weapons from Iran. Probably 90, 95%. Very high. So we'll just start bombing them day and night again. The ceasefire may be extended until like February, the end of February, the very close to the end of February. We don't know yet. Israel's more than happy to go back in and bomb the daylights out of them. But I'm not too happy to start hearing about missiles coming in from Lebanon every day. So I'm Moshe. Please pray for me and my wife Rivka. Pray for our peace, safety, protection, joy, healing. Pray for our finances. Pray for our animals and pets, which are all rescues, that they be happy, healthy, and whole. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray for better videos. And I got my email address up in the chat at the top and in the bottom of the description box. You could ask me questions if you want. And we got a lot of things to watch right now, so let's watch. And I send my Shabbat Shalom to love Yeshua HaMashiach. Shabbat Shalom because it's when we hit dusk or, the sundown, you can call it, I guess, roughly, we hit Shabbat. So I send my Shabbat Shalom to all those who love Yeshua HaMashiach. It'd be helpful if you hit the thumbs up. Most people don't bother, even though it only takes them 2 seconds, but that's how people are. And I'm out. If you guys have topics you want me to cover, send it in by email. You want prayer requests, send it in. Okay, I'm out. Thanks.